AITA for faking a job loss to test my family, then cutting them off when they failed? My name is Allison, and to many, I am what you would call a young and successful woman. I am 26 years old and work as an investment analyst at a large firm in downtown Houston. I rent a comfortable apartment, have a good salary, and have saved enough to finally put down a down payment and buy a place of my own. Debt-free, just how I like it. Everything was perfectly in order until that call from Aunt Laura came, which changed my course. Allison, honey, if you are going to come to the late November dinner this year for my birthday, you know? Her warm voice immediately brought a smile to my face. Aunt Laura was always more of a mom to me than my own mom. Of course, Auntie. I would not miss it, I told her. And from that moment on, I was already thinking about her apple pie, the one she makes like nobody else. What I did not expect was who else was going to be there. And so it is understood why that call weighed so heavily. I have to tell you what happened with my family. I had not spoken to my parents or my older sister, Danielle, in 8 years. 8. Since the day I graduated from high school. I was 18. That day, I came home full of excitement. My college acceptance letter had arrived, along with a partial scholarship to study finance and investments. For me, it was huge. It was everything I had worked for. Sleepless nights, effort, good grades. I rushed straight home to give them the news. I was full of hope, thinking that they would finally say, "We are proud of you." But what I received was the conversation that broke us. "We cannot pay for your college, Allison," said my mom, Sandra, without even looking up from what she was reading. "What do you mean you cannot?" I got a lump in my throat. What about everything Grandma said? She left money for my schooling. "You promised me." My dad, Michael, shifted uncomfortably in his chair, as if he already knew that what was coming would hurt. "Honey, things change," he blurted out, avoiding my gaze. My mom finished it off like it was nothing. "Your sister is getting married, and we need the savings for the wedding." I felt my face burning. Danielle's wedding is more important than my career? My dad took a deep breath. "For now, yes. You will figure out how to manage. You have always been smart." And that was when everything I had been swallowing for years came out. "More important," I said with a trembling voice. Like always, like everything about Danielle. Like when she wanted something and I was the one who had to understand, like when I was the one who should not get in the way. What followed was a horrible argument. The kind that leaves your throat dry and your chest tight. Old grievances came out, things I had kept inside for years. I cried, I raised my voice, they called me exaggerated, ungrateful, dramatic. At one point it was no longer a discussion, it was pure poison. That same night I packed my things, not much, just the basics, and I left to stay with the only person who always treated me fairly. Aunt Laura. She opened the door for me without asking too much. She saw my face and that was enough. "Come in, honey. You are safe here." Sometime later I found out something I did not know at the time. Aunt Laura had been saving money for her son's college, but he had passed away years prior in an accident. That money was her plan, her hope, her pain, and even so she offered it to me. I accepted, but on one condition. "I am going to pay you back for everything, Auntie, every single dollar, as soon as I start working." "I know," she told me. And she stroked my hair like when I was a little girl. College was tough. I am not going to lie. The scholarship helped, but it was not magic. I worked part-time at a coffee shop. I went to classes with bags under my eyes, ate whatever I could, studied late into the night, but I made it. When I graduated, I joined a good firm in downtown Houston, and 2 years later, I paid Aunt Laura back to the very last dollar. That day she cried, and I did too, not because of the money, but because of everything it meant. By then, my life was in order. I had independence, I had a career, I had peace, and I had avoided any contact with my family like a wildfire. Until that late November invitation arrived. On the day of the dinner, I arrived with a cheesecake in my hands, well wrapped, guarding it as if it were glass. I was in a good mood, and the moment I crossed the door of Aunt Laura's house, I almost dropped it. There they were. My mom, my dad, Danielle, and Danielle's 2 kids, little ones, Zoe around 6 and Liam around 3, sitting in the living room as if nothing had happened, as if they were a normal part of the scenery. 8 years of distance were erased all at once, like a sudden jolt. "Allison," said Aunt Laura, running toward me. "Honey, come. I will help you with the cake." Her eyes looked embarrassed, as if silently asking for my forgiveness. I did not know they were coming, she told me in a low voice. They just showed up. I stood frozen at the entrance. My heart was beating like a drum. My mom looked older, with gray hair she did not have before. My dad had gained weight, and Danielle still had that I always come out looking good face. Although now she had kids hanging from her hands. I need air, I managed to say, and I went straight to the patio. The late November chill hit hard, but I did not even feel it. My hands trembled as I gripped the railing. I did not know if I was going to feel anger, sadness, or both. Allison, I heard my mom's voice behind me. I tensed up. I did not turn around. Can we talk? 8 years without talking. And now you want to. I snapped without looking at her. What are you doing here? I heard her footsteps approaching the patio. She stood next to me but left a gap, as if being careful not to invade my space. Why? Because we made a mistake, she said, her voice breaking. Your dad and I have lived with guilt. We want to fix it. And why did you not call? Why did you not write a message? Even if it was just that, slipped out sharper than I intended. Her eyes filled with tears. Because we were ashamed, Allison, so much. And the more time passed, the harder it became. I kept looking straight ahead at the plants, at the wall, at anything but her. We found out you were coming today, she said. And we thought it might be the only chance to see you face to face and ask for your forgiveness. I remained quiet. The part of me that was still wounded wanted to bring up everything. Every comparison to Danielle, every time they made me feel lesser. But another part saw that my mom was tired. Her hands were shaking. She looked more fragile than I remembered. I need time, I said finally. This is too much. Yes, she nodded quickly. All the time you need. We will be here. That night went by on autopilot for me. I sat in a corner of the living room moving food around on my plate, as if that entertained me. Aunt Laura had made a big pot roast with rice, salad, green beans, and warm rolls. Danielle talked to other relatives. My parents helped serve and wash dishes. The kids ran around, and just as they said, they did not pressure me. They looked at me from time to time with guilt, as if waiting for a sign. I watched them when they thought I was not looking. My mom helping Aunt Laura in the kitchen, my dad playing with the kids, Danielle who looked confident, but at times insecure, as if she were also afraid I would reject her. But their presence filled the whole house. It suffocated me. The 2 weeks after that dinner were a torment. I would wake up and replay the patio conversation in my head. I would fall asleep wondering if I was crazy for even considering forgiving them. One night in my apartment, I found myself staring at my phone. My mom's number was still saved. I never deleted it. Even I did not fully know why. Maybe because a part of me, even though it hurt to accept it, always knew this was going to happen someday. My finger hovered over the call button as if it weighed a ton. In the end, I took a deep breath and dialed. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Allison, my mom answered with a voice somewhere between cautious and hopeful. Hi, Mom. My voice broke just a little. I have been thinking about what you said. I think I want to try. Slowly, but try. It felt weird saying it, as if the words were not mine. We can start over. A week later, I was standing outside the house where I grew up with a bag of gifts in my hand. They were not expensive things, they were thoughtful things. A scarf from my mom. A book my dad had mentioned years ago. Some educational toys for Zoe and Liam. The house looked smaller than I remembered, and it looked neglected. The paint was peeling in parts. The little garden that my mom used to keep impeccable was overgrown with weeds. Before I rang the doorbell, the door flew open. My mom was there, nervous but happy. You came. I came. I nodded and went in. Inside, the passage of time was also noticeable. The same furniture from 8 years ago, but now worn out. The paint on the walls begged for another coat. The floor looked old. My dad came out of the kitchen looking like he did not know whether to hug me or just say hello. Danielle was in the back with the kids hiding behind her legs, looking at me as if I were a stranger. I handed out the gifts and stayed watching their faces. My mom's eyes got watery with the scarf. My dad smiled genuinely when he saw the book. That, even though it was a small thing, stirred something inside me. At dinner, my mom made lasagna like when I was a little girl, And along with the food came the truth about their current lives. Danielle's marriage had ended badly 2 years ago, and she had moved back in with my parents with the kids. My mom had health problems and was no longer working like before. She barely made anything with part-time hours at the local library. My dad had to accept a lower-paying position because his workplace had layoffs. "And you, Allison?" asked Danielle carefully, without looking me in the eye. "How are things at work?" "Good," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "I am at an investment firm in downtown Houston. I have been doing well." The conversation continued like that, carefully avoiding the past, avoiding the uncomfortable stuff, as if we were all trying to act normal. But normalcy cannot be bought. It weighs heavy, but time distracts us. And even so, in the following weeks, something began to shift. One afternoon, my dad arrived at my apartment with a toolbox and, without making a show of it, fixed a faucet that had been leaking for months. "It is the least I can do," he said without looking at me much. Another day, my mom dropped off a bag with things she found packed away. Old photos, a letter I had written as a child, and a notebook with my school grades. It was not money, it did not erase anything. But for the first time, I felt they were trying to mend things with actions, not just words. Danielle started showing up at my office during lunchtime. She would arrive with 2 coffees from the shop downstairs and text me, "I am here. If you can come down." We would sit on a planter box outside the building or on a small bench, and little by little, we began recovering lost conversations. She told me about her divorce, about an ex who was a disaster with money and worse with responsibility. She told me how lonely she felt, how ashamed she was to return to my parents. I listened, sometimes with anger, sometimes with pity, sometimes with that weird feeling of wishing everything had been different from the start. December approached, and without realizing it, I started wanting to be with them. Before Christmas, I stopped by Aunt Laura's to drop off a gift for her. When she opened the box and saw a coffee maker, she laughed. "Are you trying to tell me something about my instant coffee?" "Maybe." I smiled at her and hugged her tightly. "Thank you for everything, Auntie. For being there when I needed it most." She pulled me back a little to look at my face. "Are you okay with the situation with your family?" she asked softly. "Are you happy with how things are going?" I thought about it, and to my surprise, the answer came out sincere. "I think so. It is different, but better." Christmas at my parents' house no longer felt like that first tense dinner. My mom decorated the house with what she could. My dad was walking around singing Christmas carols while helping in the kitchen. The kids, Zoe and Liam, had already warmed up to me, especially when they opened their presents. I gave Zoe a science kit and Liam some dinosaurs. "Aunt Allison," they yelled, climbing on top of me. "Help us make the volcano." And watching them play, a painful realization hit me all at once. I had missed out on a family, even with all the complicated parts. A few months went by and we found our rhythm. Sunday dinners became a routine. Danielle and I continued with our coffees, and in one conversation, I heard my mom say that the kids had never seen the ocean. "Let us go," I said impulsively. "During spring break. I will pay for it, period." That trip was magical. South Padre Island welcomed us with heat and the smell of the sea. We left before sunrise to beat the holiday traffic. And still, between the flow on the highway and a couple of stops, it took us several hours. Seeing the kids' faces when they saw the water for the first time. Hearing their screams as they ran toward the waves. Seeing my dad building sandcastles with them like when I was a little girl. That was worth every penny. After the trip, everything felt more natural. That is why I was not so surprised when, one night after dinner, my parents asked to speak to me. My dad scratched the back of his neck, uncomfortable. "It is just that the plumbing in the house is bad," he said. "It cannot hold up anymore. We have been putting off the repair." But my mom interrupted him quickly, with shame in her eyes. "We are very embarrassed to ask you, Allison, but we really need help, and you are the one who can." I took out my phone, opened the banking app, and solved it for them right there. It was not a small amount, but seeing the relief on their faces made me feel like I was doing the right thing. And then came other things. Nothing exaggerated, according to them. A new water heater when the old one stopped working. School supplies and uniforms for the kids, things that, in my opinion, families help each other with. Until at one Sunday dinner, my mom dropped what I was not expecting. She had been quiet for almost the whole meal, picking at her plate, and when my dad served dessert, she breathed in as if it hurt to speak. "I lost my job," she said with a broken voice. "They made cutbacks and I was let go. And I do not know what we are going to do. The medicines, the house." Her hand shook holding her coffee mug. My dad looked worried, as if the world had collapsed on him, and without thinking about it, it slipped out of me. "I can help." My own voice surprised me. "I can send you $2,000 a month. It is not a problem. I can afford it with my salary and bonuses." The relief on their faces was immediate. My mom burst out crying, but this time from happiness. My dad got up and hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. And so our new routine was set. Every month, right on time, I left the scheduled transfer going to their account. I never asked for more than what we had agreed upon, although occasionally some specific need would come up. A jacket for Liam, the microwave no longer working, Zoe needing a certain material for school. At first, I took it as normal. Unexpected expenses, kids, an old house. Danielle and I became even closer. When I had to travel for work, I started taking her sometimes, taking advantage of the trip. Nothing exaggerated. A weekend in Austin, a short visit to San Antonio, a quick trip to Dallas. We flew to Austin because I had meetings and everything was on a tight schedule. We also flew to San Antonio. We drove to Dallas early to return the same day. Two sisters trying to make up for lost years. Life picked up a rhythm. Family Sundays, monthly transfers, errands with my mom, homework with the kids. It was not perfect, but it felt like what I always wanted. Although, if I am honest, small details started appearing that I chose to ignore. A passing comment from my mom like, "With what you make, it does not even weigh on you." A laugh from Danielle when we talked about prices. "Do not you worry, you can always handle it." The way that suddenly some needs appeared more frequently, as if money was already part of the conversation, even if nobody said it directly. I told myself it was my imagination, that I was sensitive, that I could not punish the present for the past. Until another call came. "Allison," the voice of my landlady, sounding distressed. "I need to speak to you about the apartment." "Tell me," I answered, sensing something was coming. "My grandson is graduating in a couple of months and is going to work here in the city now," she explained. "And I already promised him the apartment. I am going to be honest with you, he asked me to move in earlier and I have to hand it over to him soon. Do you think you can vacate in 2 weeks? I stared at my living room, the wall I once painted light blue. The window where I would sit to read when it rained. That place was my home. "I am so sorry really," she said. "You have been an excellent tenant. If I could give you more time, I would." I hung up and sat for a while thinking. I had been saving for years, even while helping my family. My investments were doing well, and with the down payment I already had, plus my bonuses, I had enough to take the leap without strangling myself financially. Maybe this was not a problem. Maybe it was the push I needed. The following weeks I spent looking at condos with my real estate agent, Rebecca, during my lunch breaks, leaving early when I could, looking at options in several areas that were convenient for the office. I knew what I wanted. Something modern, close to work, with space to work from home. I got excited, especially over a corner unit in a new building, just a few blocks from where I work. I could already picture myself with a coffee on the balcony, inviting people over for dinner, finally living how I wanted to. But I did not tell anyone. I wanted to surprise them when everything was locked in. "Sorry, Mom, I will not be able to make it this Sunday," I told her on a call. "We are having problems at work." She sounded strange, like she was annoyed, but she let it go. And one night, while looking at paint samples and furniture options, my phone rang again. It was Aunt Laura. Her voice was tense, controlled. "Allison, can you come over? I need to talk to you, it is important." I arrived and found her pacing back and forth in her kitchen with a look on her face I had never seen before. She did not even let me sit down properly when she started. "I found out something today," she said, gripping her mug as if her pulse were shaking. "Something you need to know." "What happened?" I asked, feeling a coldness in my stomach. "Margaret and Phyllis, the ones from the neighborhood book club," she said. "You know them by sight. They have been family acquaintances for years. They sounded familiar to me. Two ladies who tend to find out about everything. Last week they ran into your mom and Danielle at the supermarket," Aunt Laura continued. and every word seemed to pain her. And they heard things that. My heart was starting to beat fast. Your family has been talking about you with a lot of people since you started helping them, she said, and then blurted it out bluntly without sugarcoating it. They call you their ATM, they make fun of you. I felt the floor move as if I had gotten dizzy. No, it cannot be. There is more, Aunt Laura said, now with a soft voice as if afraid to break me. Your mom has been going around saying she does not even need to look for a job because Allison supports her. And Danielle brags that all she has to do is say she wants to go somewhere, and you pay for everything. I was left speechless, my eyes burned. A part of me wanted to deny everything, to defend them, to say it was gossip. But Aunt Laura did not make up things like that. And in that instant, small details started to click together. The looks they exchanged, the times they changed the subject when I talked about my work, how their needs were popping up more frequently, how Danielle had been dropping hints about a trip for weeks. I am sorry, honey, Aunt Laura said, taking my hand. I did not know whether to tell you, but you do not deserve to be played for a fool. I sat there for a long while swallowing my anger, and then very slowly, an idea formed in my mind. 2 days later, I was outside my parents' house with 2 suitcases. In the morning, I had already taken my furniture to Aunt Laura's garage. Everything was planned. I took a deep breath and knocked. My mom opened the door, and the surprise washed over her face. Allison, what are you doing here? And those suitcases? My dad appeared behind her. Danielle too, looking annoyed, as if I had arrived just to complicate their day. Perfect. I made my lip quiver, as if I were holding back tears. I blinked rapidly. They fired me, I said, choking up. There were cutbacks, and on top of that, I can no longer stay in my apartment. I have to turn it over in a few days. I do not have the money to get another place right now. I stared at the floor, acting as if I were ashamed. I wanted to know if I could stay here for a few months while I get settled, just until I get back on my feet. The silence lasted 3 seconds. 3. And then my mom's face changed, as if her mask had been turned off. Does that mean you are not going to send us our monthly support anymore? She blurted out dryly, without compassion. I felt something snap inside me, even though I had expected it. No, Mom, I said, keeping up the act. Not for a while. Danielle took a step forward, red with anger. And the trip to Miami next month? She demanded. The one you were going to pay for. I already told my friends. There it was, plain as day. And now, without a doubt, they had been counting on it as a done deal from before. I shook my head, and the conversation turned tense quickly. You are so irresponsible, my mom said as if I were a stranger. What were you thinking? What kind of person lets herself get fired like that? My dad chimed in, his face red. We already knew you were going to mess it up. Always the same, always with your nonsense. Danielle threw the final blow. You cannot stay here, she said, taking my suitcases. There is no space, and I am not going to be sharing with someone who cannot keep a job. And without another word, she moved my suitcases to the entrance and set them onto the porch. I stood looking at them in silence, with a hollow feeling in my chest. These were the same people who hugged me at Christmas, who cried in gratitude, who said, "We want to fix it. Without your money, we do not need you here," my mom said coldly. Do not even think about coming here to be a burden, my dad said. And do not even think we are going to support you, Danielle finished with contempt. I took a deep breath, and instead of feeling broken, I felt a strange calm, like when you finally accept something you already knew. Without saying a word, I took my suitcases. Behind me, they began saying hurtful things. Neighbors were peering out their windows, but I no longer had any desire to keep up appearances. I left almost an hour later, now at night and with less traffic, and arrived at Aunt Laura's house. As soon as she saw my face, she opened her arms. I hugged her, and right there I finally let the tears out. They showed their true colors, did not they? She whispered, stroking my hair. I nodded with a small, sad smile. Then I took out my phone. First, I opened the banking app and canceled the scheduled monthly transfer I made to them. Then I opened the travel app where Danielle's trip to Miami was booked. Flights, hotel, everything. It took me a few minutes, and even though they charged me a cancellation fee, I canceled it. The 2 weeks I stayed with Aunt Laura were like hiding under a blanket, A safe place to breathe and process the pain. In the midst of all that, Rebecca, my agent, called me excitedly. Allison, remember the corner unit you loved? They accepted your offer. Everything accelerated. Appraisal, paperwork, signatures, inspections, appointments, back and forth with documents, bank statements, contracts, the closing process, patience. I was running on autopilot but grateful to have something concrete to focus on. It did not happen overnight. It was a process. Several intense weeks passed, and then a couple of months that felt long until the moment finally arrived. One day, after another signature and another review, they handed me the keys. I stood there in a condo that was mine, my hands trembling as if I could not believe it. Aunt Laura helped me move my things out of her garage. We spent a weekend arranging furniture, hanging pictures, setting up the space to my liking. She even insisted on helping me pick out new curtains for the large windows. That night, when she left, I did something impulsive. I took a selfie in the living room with the city lights in the background and posted it on social media with a simple caption. Dreams really do come true. Finally, my own place built on hard work and discipline. I knew what I was doing. I knew they were going to see it. And I was not wrong. Not even 2 hours had passed when the call came in. It was my mom. I answered. What is that photo? She demanded. What condo? I thought you got fired. I sat down on my new sofa. Calm, surprisingly calm. I did not get fired, Mom, I said. I am still working, I am still doing well. And yes, I am a homeowner now. There was a heavy silence, and then she raised her voice. Then why did you say that? Because I needed to test something, I answered. Test what? I could hear voices in the background. My dad and Danielle, agitated. I wanted to see if you cared about me or just my money, I said slowly. And it became perfectly clear when you asked me about the transfer first. And when Danielle got mad about the trip. And when you moved my suitcases out as if I were not welcome. Chaos erupted on the other end. My dad raising his voice, Danielle crying and complaining. Suddenly my mom changed her tone. She made it sweet, cloying, fake. Oh, we were just so startled. We were worried. Of course we care about you. It is over now. We can leave this behind us. We can go back to how things were. I let out a laugh, not out of joyful mockery but disbelief. Go back to how things were, I repeated. To the routine where I pay for everything and you make fun of me behind my back. I took a deep breath. But do not worry about a freeloader. You guys can pay for your own things now. And before hanging up, I remembered what would hurt Danielle the most. Oh, Danielle, I canceled your trip. There are no flights or hotel anymore, and if I ever travel, I will do it. For me. What? She screamed. Goodbye, I said and hung up. I blocked their numbers. Then I blocked them on social media one by one, and it felt like dropping a burden that had me bent over for years. Afterwards, they tried calling me from unknown numbers. They sent me emails, some crying, others complaining. They even showed up at my office building, but I had already warned reception and security. Seeing them standing outside arguing with the corporate guard, and then seeing them being forced to leave. It should have hurt me, but the only thing I felt was relief. That weekend, Aunt Laura came over for dinner at my new home. I made her lasagna, her favorite, and we sat on the balcony watching the sun go down and the city light up. Are you okay? She asked me, pouring us a drink. I raised my glass and looked her straight in the eye. Yes, I said. I have everything I need right here. A home of my own, a job I love, and the only family who has truly loved me. Aunt Laura clinked her glass gently against mine, and we sat there in silence, watching the city lights turn on one by one. Right then, I understood that the family you choose can be worth more than the family you are born into. And also that the hardest lessons are the ones that open the door to a beautiful beginning. Comment. Hey everyone, this story really made me stop and think. I've learned that protecting your own peace is never selfish. It's actually one of the most important things we can do for ourselves. We can open our hearts and give second chances, but we also need to pay close attention to how people treat us when they think we have nothing left to give. Setting clear boundaries shows deep self-respect. True family is about who truly supports and respects you, not just those who share your blood. Healing takes time and courage, and that's completely okay. I hope this encourages you to reflect on your own relationships and choose the ones that bring real peace. Remember, you deserve to be valued for who you are, not just for what you can provide. Choosing yourself opens the door to a much calmer and happier life. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.